everybody. Welcome to Banfield. I'm Brian Enton in for Ashleigh tonight. Happy Wednesday. It's a busy night. We've got a lot to get to over the next hour. We're 5 months away from accused Idaho killer Bryan Kohberger's trial, and there are some big developments tonight. First of all, there's DNA that we didn't know about. This just surfaced today. DNA found under victim Maddie Mogen's fingernails. It's DNA, investigators say, from 3 different people. A match to Kohberger came back as inconclusive. So the big question tonight is, what does this DNA mean and how will it impact the trial? We're going to break all of that down coming up in just a little bit. Also, Kohberger's defense may ask the judge to strike the death penalty, citing Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder. This is the first time they brought this up, that he's autistic. Could that really end up impacting his sentence? And finally, there's big news coming down today when it comes to the firing squad in Idaho. We've got the latest on all these breaking Kohberger developments. Again, we're going to lead the show with that in just a minute. Also tonight, it started as a very simple trespassing call, but when cops showed up, they discovered a boy who had been missing for 7 years. They had no idea what they were about to discover. The ice-cold case, it was blown wide open. There's a little boy right there who was discovered. Elizabeth Smart will join us live to break down all of the details on what this little boy could be going through tonight. And it was one of the biggest murder mysteries last year, and there are still so many questions. I don't know why so many people moved on from this one. Why did a Kentucky sheriff shoot and kill a judge right in the judge's chambers? Again, people just seem to forget about this story, but there's still so many questions. We've been digging into it for months. And what was going on in this Kentucky town in the middle of nowhere, right in the middle of the mountains? There was a sex scandal involving the highest levels of law enforcement. All of that is now coming to light, and all of it could have everything to do with this murder. The sheriff's attorney will join me live for an exclusive interview that is coming up later in the show. But we start tonight, of course, in Idaho, where once again Bryan Kohberger's defense team is trying to get the death penalty off the table. They've tried this before. Time is running out. In just 5 short months, Kohberger goes on trial for allegedly slaughtering 4 college students in their off-campus home in 2022. And already his lead attorneys, they've argued that capital punishment violates an international treaty banning torture, and that years or even decades on death row amount to cruel and unusual punishment. Both of those arguments have now failed. But in a newly unsealed filing, Team Kohberger gives cruel and unusual another try. They've got something new, a new trick up their sleeve. This time they're revealing that Kohberger has been diagnosed with autism. This is the first time that this has come up. There's been a lot of suspicion about this, but this is the first time. The filing says, quote, Mr. Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder, ASD, reduces his culpability, negates the retributive and deterrent purposes of capital punishment, and exposes him to the unacceptable risk that he will be wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death. In making this motion, Mr. Kohberger relies on his right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment. And it goes on to say that executing people with ASD, autism, does not meaningfully satisfy the penological aims of retribution or deterrence. Accordingly, sentencing people with ASD to death violates the 8th Amendment. Now, I mentioned this document was just unsealed, meaning, of course, it was sealed in the first place, and that has been the norm in this case, especially from the defense. It has been so frustrating for all of us covering the case because all of these motions continue to be sealed and private and blacked out. Well, the judge is apparently tired of it, which kind of came as a surprise to me. He says keeping court docs private, quote, runs counter to the public's First Amendment rights to know what is going on in the courts. And there is more news on the death penalty front also that has come in. A bill to make firing squads the preferred execution method in Idaho. It passed the state Senate today and landed on the governor's desk. He is expected to sign it. So it's not going to be gas chamber or lethal injection or electric chair. Sounds like it is definitely going to be the firing squad there in Idaho for people who are sentenced to death, but just going to require the governor's signature. Meantime, other Kohberger documents coming into public view. This is very, very interesting and brand new today. Another new document says one of the 4 victims, Maddie Mogen, had DNA from 3 different people under her fingernails. This is new, and tests to match any of it to Kohberger have been inconclusive, but there is DNA linked to 3 individuals under Maddie Mogen's fingernails. Interestingly, the defense wants the evidence tossed, writing, quote, "It might allow the jury to infer that the inconclusive data would mean that he might be included." A lot to unpack here, a lot of new developments, 5 months to trial. I want to start by bringing in Edwina Elcock. She is an Idaho defense attorney who once represented Lori Vallow. Edwina, it is nice to see you tonight. Let's first start with what I think is the biggest development, the DNA from 3 individuals under victim Maddie Mogen's fingernails. How big of a deal is this, Edwina?
I think this is a huge deal, huge. I think probably one of the most important things that we can take from the filings is that it was inconclusive, and then there was further testing that excluded Kohberger. And I think that's one of the most important things.
So, and it was interesting because at one point in the document it said that it was inconclusive, and then the defense said that they did further testing that excluded Kohberger. What does that mean, the fact that first inconclusive, but then the defense is citing this independent testing? And then why wouldn't they want it kept in, Edwina, if it shows that it wasn't him? Why are they trying to get it thrown out ahead of trial?
I think that the defense argument there is that the inference from what we can deduce from what this testimony was to the grand jury is that the state wants to infer that it was Kohberger, despite the fact that it was inconclusive. So I think that the defense is wanting to insulate against any inference whatsoever that the source of that DNA is Kohberger.
What do you think it means that that it's 3 individuals, according to this filing? 3 individuals' DNA found under the fingernails. What could that possibly indicate?
Well, with DNA evidence, and especially how little is required to get a DNA profile these days, is that it could be, right, anyone. She could be the source of the DNA. It could be an additional 2 other unknown individuals. But what the standout is that it's through the state's testing, it's inconclusive with respect to Kohberger, and through this independent testing, it ruled him out. So I'm not sure why the defense would want the DNA evidence thrown out if they have reliable expert testing that shows that excludes Kohberger from that DNA profile.
Yeah, so if the initial testing is saying inconclusive and the state additional testing is saying that Kohberger has been ruled out from the DNA under Maddie's fingernails, can they present both sides to the jury, or does the judge end up making a decision about which testing was more reliable? How does that work?
Well, theoretically, they can present both sides, right? The defense is absolutely entitled to put on whatever defense evidence that they have. However, depending on what this independent testing is and how reliable it is, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a state's motion trying to exclude that independent testing.
It's been so frustrating, Edwina, for those of us following the case, because so many of the court documents have been sealed. We've been kept out of hearings. They don't let us in for some of these hearings. And now the judge has come out and said that he's upset by it, that he doesn't believe that the defense should continue to file these motions under seal, that the public deserves to know more. Do you think we're about to get a treasure trove of information in the next couple of weeks, suddenly out of this court, that we weren't expecting, now that the judge seems to say, hey, we want more stuff public?
I do. Absolutely. I think with Judge Hippler presiding, as what we've seen in his rulings, and with this, the latest order, the tides are changing, and we are seeing more information than we've seen during the pendency of this case in a few short months. Absolutely, the tides are changing, and that is the correct.
Yeah, I mean, we got that in.
Should happen.
Yeah, and listen, as a journalist, that's the way I feel. Obviously, I want more information, and it has been frustrating. We got the initial probable cause, and then it was just like dead zone, darkness for months and months and months, and now we're finally starting to learn a little bit more, like this DNA information. Edwina, we appreciate you coming on with us tonight from Idaho. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to bring in now Carol Weinman. She is an attorney with an expertise in autism and criminal law who is often called as an expert witness in the case. And we're so happy to have you tonight, Carol, because of this other big development with Bryan Kohberger. The defense now suddenly makes this filing saying that he is autistic and that that's a reason that he should not face the death penalty. There was apparently some kind of medical review done somewhat recently. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a viable defense. I shouldn't say that it's a viable mitigating factor in any trial, and definitely a possible mitigating factor for the death penalty. So I'm not surprised that they're raising it.
Has this ever worked before? Has this ever gotten the death penalty thrown by the defense saying that someone is on the autism spectrum?
Well, Brian, I can't speak specifically to the death penalty. I am not familiar with a case that has argued it for the death penalty. But I can tell you that it is used, and I have used it very successfully in mitigating sentences in general for criminal offenses.
It just seems like the defense is trying to throw anything at the wall to see what will stick, because they have had different arguments trying to get death thrown out over and over again. And now, 5 months to the trial, they say that he's been tested and that he's autistic and that that's the reason. I mean, why not just do that from the beginning?
Well, that I don't know when, according to what I know, he was only recently diagnosed with autism. They couldn't have brought it up before the diagnosis. You would know that better. My information is that it was brought up more recently, that this diagnosis was arrived at.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, and that it was one doctor, we presume, who made that diagnosis. I guess must have evaluated him while he's been in jail in Idaho. Is that enough in terms of just having one doctor diagnosis? Would you need more to do something as serious as throw out the death penalty?
No, because autism is diagnosed with a very standardized test called ADOS, and it actually prevents a difference of opinion in experts or doctors. So they only need one doctor that has diagnosed it, because it's a standardized test for trained professionals.
It's interesting. It's interesting, Carol. I posted this on X when this development came out. And I think, so many of us have someone in our family who is autistic or a friend. And people are really fired up about this, and they're angry that Kohberger's defense is going this route. I think this really offends a lot of people who are close to someone who's autistic.
Well, that's not unusual. I think it offends people for a couple of reasons. I think it offends people because if they know someone that's autistic, or they have a family member or someone close to them with autism, they may be a bit offended by the fact that somebody who committed such a heinous crime is trying to hang any of it on the fact that he has autism. Or yes, that they're trying to use autism to their advantage in a manner like this. So that's not unusual, Brian. We often see this where there are certain people close to others with autism that may find it disturbing or offensive that it is being used or used in this manner.
Yeah, and I get it. Look, I get why people are offended. It'll be interesting, though. Like you said, several of the lawyers who I floated it by today all said the same thing. Interesting. They didn't immediately rule it out. They thought it was an interesting argument. So we'll have to see how it goes. Some of their motions so far to get death. Go ahead. Sorry, Carol.
Well, autism is more often we're seeing it more in the court system, in the criminal court system especially. So that's why I think they are entertaining it. I'm not surprised. Because it is considered viable and it's considered important information in a criminal trial or sentencing at this point.
We'll see what the judge decides. Carol Weinman, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, still to come tonight, a routine trespassing call turns into a jaw-dropping discovery. There's crazy body camera video with this case. A missing boy, gone for 7 years, a fugitive mother, a cold case, all of it blown wide open by eagle-eyed cops. That story is next.
Nausea and dry mouth. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor how Caplyta can help you let in the light. Find savings at Caplyta.com.
I told you I don't need these anymore. I have Sling. This critical time calls for the critical news coverage that Sling provides.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
The most important news at the best price. Sling lets you do that.
So about a week and a half ago on the outskirts of Denver, a homeowner checked his security cameras and saw something that he should not have seen. 2 people in a vacant home that he had put up for sale. Didn't make sense to him. So the man called police, and the deputies who went to that house, they were looking for trespassers. Well, they found something that they totally did not expect. 2 kids sitting in a car alone. And soon a man and a woman stepped out of the house claiming that they worked with the realtor. But the deputies, good thing they didn't, they just didn't buy it. Slowly, the couple's story began to unravel. For the next 4 hours, the deputies worked to figure out who these people really were and why they seemed to be hiding.
He has probably that person's ID.
But we don't know because there's no picture.
Yeah. Well, let's see when it was.
The Georgia driver's license. The number comes back to a lady born in 1921. The name.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lady. Yeah. Born in 1921.
I'm a deputy in Douglas County, Colorado, and I'm out with a vehicle, and when we run its VIN number, it shows as belonging to y'all. Is there a manager or somebody I could talk to?
Interesting. It's a 19 warrant, updated in 23. So they probably. So is this a rental or are they buying?
So it's to an alias that they've given us, the dead guy. It's rented. The dead guy that he says he is the one that's got it registered. Okay. And when I pull up the registration, it's that guy's name plus a trust.
There, you'll have it all. You'll have her name, date of birth, the warrant. And the Kinder PD. Yeah, what we need to do is figure out what kid is missing. Well, we haven't run the kids yet.
So finally, the man was identified as 42-year-old Elliot Blake Bourgeois, and the woman who you see there, her name is Rabia Khalid. She's 40 years old. Turned out that they were wanted for kidnapping. The person she allegedly kidnapped was one of the kids in the car, her own 14-year-old son, Abdul Aziz Khan, who'd been missing for 7 years. Think about that. 7 years they were looking for that little boy, half the kid's life. Back in 2017, Khalid and the boy's father were in a bitter custody fight, and on the day the father was set to be granted full custody, Khalid disappeared. Now, with Aziz and her new husband, Bourgeois, they were all together and they were on the run. For years, the U.S. Marshals searched 11 states. The case, it even appeared on Netflix in the docuseries Unsolved Mysteries. Look at this.
Rabia would put up hindrances and roadblocks trying to stop me from seeing Aziz. She would schedule soccer games during my weekends, and she would make up excuses about him being sick. So she would try to prevent him from seeing me.
It seems that during that whole period, she was meeting with lawyers. She was finding out about custody. She was figuring out what she needed to do in order to keep Aziz in Atlanta.
Ultimately, Rabia wanted Aziz to have nothing to do with his life, in New Orleans.
All right, Khalid and Bourgeois now face charges of kidnapping, forgery, identity theft, lying to authorities, and also trespassing because they were at that vacant home. For their part, Aziz's family says, we were overwhelmed with joy that Aziz has finally been found. My next guest knows exactly what that moment feels like. At age 14, Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped and held captive for 9 months. Her story gripped the nation. She is now a child safety advocate and author, and she joins me live now. Elizabeth, it's an honor to speak with you. You did an amazing job filling in on this show, by the way. I watched the night that you filled in a couple months back, so that was awesome to see, and we appreciate you coming on again tonight. What went through your mind when you heard this story about Aziz?
I mean, of course, first is heartbreak, but then realizing that he's been found, to me, that is that is such a miracle. We should all be celebrating it. And it should be such a huge reminder that we cannot give up on any missing person because you never know when they're going to be found. It might not be the first 24 hours. It might not be the first year. I mean, we look at Aziz's case right here and it was 7 years, half of his life. So what a miracle. And let us all remember to always keep our eyes open and always pay attention no matter where we are.
It's interesting that parent abduction is apparently the most common form of abduction, which I don't think people necessarily realize. Is it as traumatic when it's a parent who's responsible?
It is the most common form of abduction. And actually, as I've met with survivors over the years, I have had so many of them come to me and say, people think because I was kidnapped by my parent or by my mom or by my dad or, by a family member that it wasn't that bad, but it was terrible. So for us to sit here and look at Aziz's case right now, we should by no means say like, oh, well, whatever he went through isn't that bad because he was with his mom. The truth is we don't know what he went through. And as a survivor myself, I can say like, I'm grateful that I was kidnapped by a stranger. I'm grateful that I was raped and abused by a stranger because I can't imagine how deep that betrayal would feel if it was by a parent or a family member, someone who's supposed to love me and protect me and kind of be that shield for me in the world. So I think as we look at Aziz's case, like we need to respect his family's wishes. And I think we can't make a judgment call on what he's been through right now or brush it off as maybe not being that bad because it was his mother who kidnapped him.
Yeah, it's a good point. I was just thinking how confused he must be because you're with your mother. 7 years go by. Who knows what he went through during that time or what she may have done to him. But now he sort of has to reacclimate to his father and the poor dad. But it must just be very confusing for that little boy.
I mean, confusing probably for the whole family. I know in my case, my parents wanted to support me and they wanted to help me in any way that they could, but they didn't know what I'd been through. I personally did not want to speak about what I'd been through. And so, I mean, sometimes it was kind of like, well, what can we do for you? How do we help you? And where Aziz has been gone for so long, it's almost going to be like probably meeting a new person for the first time. And I mean, 7 years, like half a lifetime, that's a lot of time to make up for.
Yeah, obviously, hopefully he'll be in therapy and it's just a terrible situation for him, but at least he'll be reunited with his dad, who I can't imagine what the dad, he's a victim too in all of this, obviously. Elizabeth Smart, it was a pleasure having you on tonight. You're just a fearless fighter and we appreciate you taking the time.
As always, thanks for having me.
Okay, still to come tonight, the manslaughter case against Alec Baldwin. It may be closed. The family of the woman who was killed on Baldwin's movie set say that he still has to answer for Helena Hutchins' untimely and preventable death, and they say he still hasn't done one very basic thing, and they are not happy about his new reality show where he talks about this whole tragedy. The family's attorney, Gloria Allred, she's right there. She's going to join me live coming up right after this. Alec Baldwin, legally speaking, is no longer accused of involuntary manslaughter. That was the charge he was tried for in the accidental shooting on a movie set that killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. I was back in 2021. Since he was cleared of charges last summer, Baldwin has begun a new chapter of entertainment stardom in the world of reality television. The Baldwins. He's got a show. It premiered on TLC 2 Sundays ago, and in between chasing around his house full of kids and couples counseling sessions, the subject of the movie set tragedy has come up on the show. Take a look.
This is why I think I'm so aware of my relationship with my kids. I feel like our kids have been in a boat.
Yeah.
And that boat's been going up and down and up, and there's been, stormy seas, and they've been scared.
Breaking news right now, we're learning more about a deadly accident on a movie set in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
The hardest thing about this is that a woman lost her life. A son lost his mom. And that's what makes everything so painful.
Actor Alec Baldwin is now charged with involuntary manslaughter.
I've never been through anything like this in my entire life.
Where do you go from a tragedy?
I do not want to go back to the life I had. I don't care.
You have a lot of individuals that...
counting on us.
You and the two of you together, right?
Love you. We stayed together through really hard times. And I'm proud of us.
And I thank God for you.
All right, so safe to say that the family of Halyna Hutchins are not fans of Baldwin's new reality show. Here's part of a statement that they released after the first episode premiered. It says, the Baldwin reality show at once celebrates Mr. Baldwin's joy of being with his children while ignoring the fact that Alec Baldwin took a child away from her parents. That is the painful and actual reality with which Halyna's parents and sister live with each and every day. And there's something else also. Halyna Hutchins' parents say in the 3.5 years since the accidental shooting, they have never once heard directly from Alec Baldwin. There was never a phone call, never a letter, never any kind of contact, they say, just silence, never an apology. I want to bring in Attorney Gloria Allred. She represents the family of Halyna Hutchins. Gloria, thank you for being with us tonight. I think the no apology thing really rubs a lot of people the wrong way, especially seeing him with this reality show now. But at the same time, there's this civil lawsuit. I mean, do you think it could be the lawyers just saying, you're not allowed to reach out to them? Could that be what's going on here?
I don't know. I have no idea what his lawyers say. But what I say, as one of the lawyers for Halyna's mother, Olga, her father, Anatoly, and her sister, Svetlana, is, what about human decency? It's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. Maybe he's not required by law to try to contact them, have a phone call with them, or FaceTime or anything else, just to say, I'm sorry that I was holding the gun that had a bullet in it that discharged and killed your daughter. Why does somebody have to be required by law to do that? It's the normal, decent thing to do that I think most people would do if that happened, whether or not it was an accident, whether or not it was reckless behavior, whether or not he followed gun protocols, which he didn't, for safety. He should do that. He knows that I represent them with other attorneys. All he had to do was have his attorneys contact me. I would have arranged the call, but never did that. Meanwhile, my clients are in Ukraine in a war zone, frequently having to interrupt calls with their attorneys, us, to run to a bomb shelter because a place is being bombed, and they have lost their beautiful, talented, loving daughter that they had a close relationship with. And all Alec Baldwin is doing is having his attorneys attack my clients. It's just wrong. And to have this reality show where, as you have mentioned, he shows the joy of being with his 7 children. Well, what about the pain that they're feeling at this time? He's never even said that he was responsible for Halyna's death. And they mentioned, okay, well, a son lost his mother, and that is very sorry. I mean, that is sad. And it really must be devastating to the child, who, by the way, is the grandchild of my clients. But what about the parents? Why he never mentions them, ever, on his show or in any other interviews in all those days? They are the parents, and they are still grieving every day. And, you know, what about this reality show? What's he doing on it? His wife is talking about now he has post-traumatic stress disorder from killing Helena. Well, what about, how do you think the parents are feeling? They have
and he was reportedly suicidal. They say he was reportedly suicidal, that he shows remorse. I mean, do you think any of that is genuine?
I haven't heard any remorse said to the parents, to my clients. And look, we have a civil lawsuit that's been ongoing for several years. It's in New Mexico. And maybe he's doing this to try to make himself the real victim in this case for Alec's PTSD. He's got 7 children. He's a good father. Just to have, perhaps to have an impact on the jury pool so that they will like him and not think of him as being irresponsible. We don't know. But I can't say that that's not possible. And why does he not mention the parents at all? Why doesn't he reach out to them? So here's what we're going to do. A reality show is not something that's under oath. So we have now filed a notice this week with the court and served on his attorneys that we want to take his deposition, that's testimony under oath, in my office in New York. And we want to do it the Friday before Mother's Day. If they need to change it to another date, we'll be open to that. But it's time for him to testify under oath, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help him God. Yeah. We want to examine him.
Yeah. And maybe something new will come out of that. And like you said, I mean, it seems like he could have apologized through the lawyers.
Yeah,
there could have been an arranged phone call. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Gloria Allred, thank you so much. We'll keep an eye on it. Let us know how the deposition goes. Thank you.
Okay,
all right, still to come. If you only go by the video, thank you, Gloria. If you only go by the video, it appears to be an open and shut case. A Kentucky sheriff pulls out his gun, empties it into his longtime friend, a district judge. The sheriff shoots the judge in the judge's own chambers. But the sheriff's attorney now says he'll present evidence that his client was not criminally responsible for the judge's killing. How is that possible? There is a lot going on with this story. This small town, talk about scandal and corruption. The attorney is going to join me for an exclusive interview next.
Let's put it to a vote.
This is going to wreak havoc on overtime approvals.
Anything can change the world of work. From HR to payroll, ADP designs forward-thinking solutions to take on the next anything.
So when a longtime Kentucky judge was shot to death last September in his own chambers, it was hard to believe that the gunman was the sheriff of that very county. An insane story. The sheriff Sean Mickey Steins, shot the judge, Judge Kevin Mullins. And there's no denying that the sheriff did it because it was actually captured on video right in the judge's chambers. So what could have led to this? Look at this is the video. It's insane, by the way. We obviously pause it, but you see the gun go up. What would lead the sheriff to shoot the judge? Well, it turns out there is a twisted sex scandal in the small Kentucky town involving high-level law enforcement demanding sex from inmates. NewsNation obtaining audio interviews from the victims that show just how dirty and corrupt this Kentucky county may be. Take a listen.
You think you could get her to call me if she has something she wants to say? We're willing to listen to anybody.
Well, she was wanting to. She said, give her my name. She said, this place is dirty, and it is. It's. And what's really funny, like, city police and Pikeville, nobody knows that they're like, it's a dirty county. And I'm like, well, then why ain't somebody done something about it before now? Do you think I have any concern, like, for my safety or anything? I know being alone, when this first started, which he was mad. But then there's a little boy that said something. And so, like, my son and ex-husband and the magistrate was like, she better be careful. She's dealing with a dangerous game.
saw that. A dirty county, dangerous men. This comes from the interviews, and concern for safety. That's what the victims felt. But could that have to do with why the sheriff killed the judge? I'm joined now by the sheriff's attorney, Jeremy Bartley. We appreciate you coming on tonight, Jeremy. This is just one of those crazy stories. I mean, you don't hear about this happening ever, where a sheriff kills a judge in the judge's chambers. The big sex scandal, which we've reported on, all these outrageous crimes involving these high-level officials in this town. How does that connect back to the sheriff shooting the judge?
Well, I think the important key to remember is that earlier in this week, there was a deposition. My client was to give a deposition in the civil case. Leading up to that deposition, there's multiple witnesses, family, members of the community, folks that he worked with that saw my client in the struggle, the stress, the strain, the sleepless nights he had. He felt very much threatened about what he might say. Would he say too much that would put his family in danger? You heard Sabrina Adkins in that interview just before you switched to speak with me. She talked about the dangerous men there. So this deposition takes place on Monday. And as the week goes on, Mickey continued to be in fear that he had said something, or that, further discovery in that civil case would something he would say would ruffle the feathers of some dangerous men. And ultimately, he was in fear for the safety of his wife and his daughter. And I think what you see there is the result of that.
Yeah, and just so people understand, there was this civil lawsuit ongoing. Again, I talked about the corruption and the deputies accused of having sex with inmates and all sorts of shady stuff. So there's the civil suit that's ongoing. There had already been a criminal investigation and arrests, and the sheriff was being called in for a deposition, and you're saying that he was concerned about it. Did he have information about other high-level people, perhaps even the judge, that were involved in all of this? Is that why he was so concerned?
Well, I think the bigger concern was from other people as to what he might say. And I think certainly there was information that Mickey had that he knew that other people didn't want to be made public. And if, in fact, they felt that some of the stuff that he said during the deposition hurt them or exposed them for what they were doing, then, there certainly was a threat that Mickey perceived, one that was both perceived and real. And, he was afraid for the safety of his wife and daughter.
Were they trying to pin any of these sex crimes on him? Does that play into it?
Well, I think the bigger concern that we're talking about here, I've not seen any evidence that my client was implicated in any of the corrupt sex practices that they had. I've not seen anything to that degree, but the fear was that Mickey is under oath. What will they ask him? What will he say in response? Will he talk about? You're talking about a district judges' chambers where there's a live security feed as a result of what was going on back there. That's unheard of. And it just speaks to, the level of things that were happening behind the scenes that these folks would very well could cause physical harm to keep secret. And Mickey was placed in this situation, and simultaneously, because of the stress, because of other factors that I don't want to get into tonight, but, his mental health had taken a toll as well. And so what you see is a result of both extreme pressure that was placed upon him, the fear of what other people might do around him, and the impact of mental health as well.
Did he know something about the judge being involved in all of this and this whole sex scandal? I mean, is that why he did this? I mean, because like you said, he knew he was on camera. I mean, he was right in the chambers. Is there something he knew about this judge?
I think that certain people within that community were concerned that he would say things that will be harmful to the people surrounding the judge and the folks in the courthouse at large. And what you see is the result of a man who believed that his wife and daughter had been or would be kidnapped or killed and hurt. And, at that point, he had not been able to get in contact with them. And he was scared for their safety. And, and that's why we said from the beginning, this is classic EED at worst. And at best, we think it's a criminal responsibility, insanity defense that's there.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, what was going on in this town, what this has now revealed as we continue to dig into it is insane. Jeremy Bartley, we appreciate you coming on tonight. We'll continue to report and follow the case along. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Major details on a story that we first brought you, a case that we've been following for more than a year. We know what killed three friends who got together to watch their beloved Kansas City Chiefs. Today, prosecutors slapped serious charges on who they say is responsible. Remember, this was a big story that we covered for weeks. Now there's some resolution. That's next. Here we go, a big and important update to an awful story that we covered last year. Back in January 2024, three men were found dead at a house in Kansas City. They were all friends and all super fans of the Kansas City Chiefs. They'd gathered at a fourth friend's house to watch a Sunday game, and that's the last time anyone saw them. Their bodies, you remember, found 2 days later. They were in the backyard, frozen, and the autopsy showed that they had cocaine and fentanyl in them. Well, today, prosecutors announced charges against two men, Jordan Willis, the man whose rental house the victims died in, and Ivory Carson. So charges tonight. There was a big press conference. All right, that's all the time for tonight. See you tomorrow. Cuomo's next.
Chris Cuomo here. I hope that Ash Wednesday, if it is meaningful to you, I hope it is full of meaning for you. Welcome to NewsNation. So, talk about being penitent. Boy, do we have a lot of people who need to ask forgiveness after last night. We got a full serving of the state, not of our union, but the state of our political disunion. President Trump wanted this address. He wanted to be in front of Congress. He wanted to be in front of you. Why? Well, putatively, to regain momentum, okay? To remind that his agenda is on fire. The most, the best, the biggest, the fastest, et cetera, et cetera. A string of superlatives. Why?